Huh?
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, featuring your hosts, Taylor Field and Ruben Olson.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cryptid Clues, Campfire Clues. I am your host, Taylor Field. And just before we get into today's topic, just a little bit of housekeeping I'm just going to cover. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca. You can send us an email. If you just want to say hi or you have anything you want to talk about, CryptidClues@gmail.com. And you can also find us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and our Patreon, where you can get ad-free episodes early and sometimes exclusive episodes as well, only available on the Patreon feed. So, what we're doing today is Campfire Clues just kind of goes into people's encounters and experiences that they have reported that, again, some people don't feel comfortable coming on the show, which is totally fine. But I do find some experiences that I talk to them about and just want to discuss a little bit more, and they agree, like, hey, yeah, talk about it, you put it on your show. So I like to just kind of read it word for word, quote unquote, exactly as they wrote it, just so it can kind of be shared and everyone can kind of hear what is going on out there in the world. This is, however, our kind of spin-off series, our main Cryptid Clues episodes with me and Ruben. Those drop every Monday, and we go into different locations, cryptids, paranormal, demonic, everything, even aliens. We just kind of get into the nitty-gritty and do research on these different things and see what's going on. So that's every Monday. These Campfire Clues drop every Friday. And other than that, let's get into it. So we're going to be talking about a little bit more on the goat man, or I should say goat person, as quoted by this individual. So me and Ruben did do a deep dive into the goat man a few months back now, actually. We just covered the different types, but I'll get into that a little bit after. What I'm going to talk about right now is going straight into this person's encounter. So without further ado, quote unquote, here we go. My encounter with a goat person. I've already made a story here, but I'd like to share more of my encounters that shook me to my core. Before I start, I would like to clarify I don't exactly know if it was a goat man type thing or something worse, like, as I've mentioned in the comments of my last story, a skinwalker. It was a 2-day occurrence because my parents had gone out for a concert, leaving me around 10 or 11 at that time, and my sister, who was around 16 to 17, S. The first day was fine, with a bit of tension, because I wasn't used to my parents being gone for long periods of time. And I guess to lighten up the mood, my sister brought a few friends over. I only remember one being meaningful in the story, so let's call him B. B was also a longtime friend of mine because S had brought him around a lot. To be clear, he's strong, but no offense, large person. Day 1 was over with little trouble. Day 2 is where the scary stuff happens. The day was alright, but from what I recall, we heard some rustling outside. But we lived near a lot of stray cats, so we paid it no mind. Night came and we were in the garage listening to music while S and her friends were drinking something that isn't water, but in moderation. Later that night, we heard a lot of movement, and we started to get freaked out. The dogs we had inside the house started freaking out at the window, and everything just started going wrong. A slight scratching sound was heard outside of the garage. So B, acting like a hero, walked to the door and asked if he should go out, and most of our responses were no. So we stood guard at the door, and soon after, the thing figured out how to open the door, and B and the thing were fighting at the door. B was trying to keep it out while it was trying to get in. This horrifying thing, things that kids have nightmares about. It had 2 horns, and it was shrouded in the outside darkness. The thing had gotten a look inside and felt the heat from the wood furnace, and I'm assuming it really didn't like the heat or fire because it bolted out, and B flung himself into the door by accident when all the resistance disappeared instantly. My parents came back the next day, and lucky for me, S remembered what happened along with B, and we had told my parents, who thankfully believed us because they have been subjected to paranormal occurrences as well. They told us not to worry about it, and that they would try to protect us. Paranormal things like this only happen when we are alone from our parents in our current house for long periods of time. None of them has been as bad as this, though. Yeah, that's the story. End quote. So I find this to be a very intriguing story. I really like when we have multiple people that have come together and all saw the same thing. That's when things get very fascinating. And we also have something here that was triggered by something in the room. So this thing was trying to make its way in, and the heat that was coming off of this fire, the wood furnace, it just triggered it. And those are things I like. I like looking into that when there's certain, I guess, what would you call it, a trigger item? It's something that's kind of in the area that either smells or it's just does something, and it keeps these things at bay or fends them off. There are few things I've heard people talk about with Bigfoot, for example, that can kind of deter them from going into specific areas on properties and such like that. And it's just fascinating. Now, this thing, really what it is, though, in this experience, it's mentioned, okay, skinwalker or goat man, not really sure. That's the tricky part, to kind of like form that bridge to what it could be, because the shadow was covering it up, and the only distinguishable features that they were able to pinpoint were these horns on this thing, but they knew it was not human. So before I get into that and touch upon our previous actual Cryptid Clues episode, I'm going to jump to a quick ad break, and then we'll be right back. And we're back. So I'm just going to kind of reiterate on a few of the goat men that I have researched out there. We've got the Poplick Monster from Kentucky. We got the Lake Worth Monster from Texas, Waterford Sheepman from Pennsylvania, the Maryland Goat Man from Beltsville, Maryland, the Proctor Valley Monster from California, and again, the Alton Bridge Goat Man from Texas. Now, the Alton Bridge Goat Man, me and Ruben kind of disassociated that necessarily as being an actual cryptid, but just its own kind of experience in its own sense. We look at like the Poplick Monster, Lake Worth Monster, Waterford Sheepman. There's a few of these, again, that we debugged, and some just didn't seem to kind of fit this narrative. It seemed more like a folklore aesthetic as they were, moving forward with these different experiences. But there are some that they come in, okay, it's part man, part goat, part sheep-looking entity or something along those lines, and there's some that are reported to live in caves out in the woods and out in the mountainous areas. And these sightings do pick up more and more frequently as you get from like the 60s going up to around the 70s. But one of my biggest things of association with this being is the religious aspect. And I know 2 weeks ago, me and Ruben, we did the Leviathan. We got really into the religious portion of that and what it means, like coming out of the Bible and how it's connected to things in our world and all these different aspects and dynamics. And I look forward to eventually tackling the Goat Man on a much more religious note with Ruben, pulling a lot more from the Bible and the different religious branches out there on the planet. So when I say, I don't want to come off as like preachy or anything like that. This is just my own kind of perspective and connection between these two. Now, Goatman, it's very similar in some aspects to a New Jersey Devil. You could say that. That's my opinion. You could also say, again, necessarily minus the wings, not all these Goatmen necessarily have wings. They just, as they are, a Goatman. But Baphomet is one thing that I find very eerily connected, and in this sense it's just kind of like a quick moment. It's trying to get in for whatever reason into this house, Then there's certain cryptids that they may walk around a house, they may smack the sides, they may try to see, okay, who is in there. And if no one's in there, maybe they'll go in, maybe they won't, maybe they'll back off. They're just curious. And you have something like this that is forcibly trying to get in. It knows that people are in there now, and that doesn't stop it. And it terrifies me. So when you have something like Baphomet, who is this associated with the sabbatic goat, essentially, it's trying to get in, and in God's name, you know, I'm not a religious man, but who in God's name knows what it wants to do? It picked a moment when these kids were isolated and had no parents with them. And that, again, it terrifies me. I think that there's certain entities out there that will latch on and try and make a push when they know you are vulnerable. Partially being inebriated is a form of being vulnerable. Granted, when you're inebriated, there are certain things that could happen that could manifest, I guess, out of one's mind. But I don't think that necessarily should discredit everything, because I'm not... In this sense, we have multiple people that shared the exact same experience and were conscious that, okay, something was trying to get in. There was noises outside. There was this consistent narrative that was evolving into this incredible experience and encounter. But it just remains very fascinating, and I'm glad everyone made it out safe. This kind of area is something that I'm trying to look more into. I find these older Go-Man experiences and encounters that I've looked into with Ruben and very modern day stuff is extremely tricky. At least, I mean, I'm no expert. I don't have a massive network like most very crazy professional explorers and investigators have out there. Maybe someday, but definitely not today. So the experiences that I do find are rare. And this is one such rare occurrence that I really wanted to share, and I appreciate this individual giving me permission to share this experience, because I do think these things, I've said it many times, these inexplainable entities, they're trying to break through and come after us and get towards us for who knows what kind of sinister gains they have in mind and whatever plan they have. The scary thing is I do believe these things are picking up more frequently in certain parts of the world, and it's being overlooked and overshadowed and disregarded. I said this in the last Campfire Cruise, or touched upon it at least, that our parents and our grandparents come from a different breed and different generation where you pull the technology back down, you have people much more versed in the land and their surroundings and everything that's going on, and much more of a connection and a tap into this very eerie, through the curtain area or realm of the world that we necessarily are being kept out of intentionally by unnamed, unknown entities or organizations, which is beyond my insight and knowledge, but I suspect nonetheless. And nowadays we have so much technology. I mean, some people do go out, and the ones that do go out and get out into the woods or get away, they are still experiencing crazy things. Whereas the other ones, like day-to-day Joe Blows, we work our 9 to 5, come home, and don't really put any second thought into it. And our technology can work great. It can put us out in these situations to shed light on everything out there, on these cryptids and entities. But at the same time, it can put that curtain back over our eyes. And again, I'm not trying to be preachy. This is all my perspective and my thought. But it's interesting once you can kind of break out of that a little bit and you can really see these interesting similarities and connections, because it could be as simple as some Bigfoot are seen with red eyes, some Dogmen are seen with red eyes, and there's some other crazy paranormal aspects that connect to those things. But again, I know there's many people out there like, no, Bigfoot is this, or Dogman is this, and they don't like to associate it with anything. But me personally, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket. this could be really anything, and I'm glad that these people are okay. And at the end of the day, I am just going to keep holding this open mind as to what it could connect to. It could be such a larger thing, or it could be a very small thing, but whatever it is, I'm going to keep exploring it and finding out. I know this individual has had many more paranormal occurrences and experiences, and I'm very curious as to what else that has unfolded. And I'm kind of looking into what I could kind of tap into for stories and these people's experiences for further Campfire Clue episodes. I actually, in doing so, there was a specific location that I'm excited to talk about, that an individual, which I'm not going to name, not going to give any association to at all, just for respect of privacy, and because they've had a lot of interesting and fascinating experiences I've been discussing with them. But this certain location I'm going to dive into and save it to discuss with Ruben, because I feel like there's a lot of interesting things that are kind of expanding out of this area, and the areas just fascinate me. Me and Ruben have done the Canuck Chase, and I one of these few past weeks I went into a little bit about national parks, but more so into underground cave systems and networks, and how it's just a fascinating intertwined connection of everything. But the other thing I do hope to get more into is all like water experiences, water cryptids and everything like that. I think I've seen so many different coverages of land-faring entities and everything, but I just think about that, the level of depth in the ocean, and how many sightings are out there, how many people are out in their boats and they see things, how many scuba divers are out there and they witness absolutely unknown entities or unknown things down there. It's just fascinating. So I'm going to leave that as kind of like a little semi cliffhanger, as hopefully what's to come. I don't know how I'm going to find these people. I know some scuba divers, and maybe they know other scuba divers that have seen things, but I'll have to immerse myself more into that world and community and just kind of network and see who I can meet. But that's kind of where I want to take this show. I want to be able to get all this whole variety of different encounters and just compile them up so people can come together, they can reference this information, and just, again, not feel alone out there, and just learn what we can, because I don't think that there's ever going to be a point in time where we ever stop learning about these things. And that is my 2 cents. That is my Taylor Field fact of the day. But I'm going to close this episode out there. Me and Ruben will be back on Monday with a awesome new cryptid location discussion topic, I'm sure. So until next time, again, you can find us with the internet connection. CryptidClues.ca is our home base. You can find us at CryptidClues@gmail.com. If you have an experience in our account, you want to message us, let us know, discuss. Happy to just lend an ear and just hear you out. Social media, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And then you can also find us again on our Patreon, where you can get ad-free exclusive episodes. It's great. It's a good time. But yeah, that's everything. So thank you very much for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Taylor. We'll see you later. Stay safe.